Hey, this is Kirk Behrendt. You're watching the Best Practices Show, where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices anywhere in the country. And I got a hot, young, new superstar that if you haven't seen him, you're going to see him soon. Dr. Josh Austin, you're going to see him in just a second. So do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button. We'll see you in just a second. Hey guys, welcome back. This is the Best Practices Show, and I got a huge treat for you today. One of my good buddies in dentistry who just kind of emerged in the scene. He was like a kid, and then the next thing you know, he's like an expert, and that happened lightning fast, and I don't even know how that happened. But Dr. Josh Austin from San Antonio, Texas, thank you, brother, for being on. I appreciate it.
What's up, man? How are you? Anything for the great Kirk Behrendt.
Oh, stop it. Stop it. Oh, man. It's been fun getting to watch you, get to know you. And I met you that first time, and I think it was at the study club meeting, Seattle Study Club meeting, and it was down in San Antonio. And then everybody, you came up to me, and I'm like, this kid's like the social media genius. You kind of started as a social media genius. Then you've kind of diversified into a whole lot of different things, doing restorative updates. You're doing pearls now. I hear about you every time I go out and speak. Somebody's like, oh, I had Josh. He was fantastic. And I'm like, what do you speak on? And I'm like, oh, it was like everything. It was like materials. It was like this. It was like that. And you also do an amazing podcast, which is a whole lot of fun, very, very edgy. And I want you to talk about called The Accidental Geniuses with Mike Totola. And it's not really content driven. It's just more entertainment, right? Is that the whole deal?
Yeah. So for those of you who know Mike, Mike is a great entertainer and comedian, and he's a dentist as well. And he and I got to know each other through dental economics, hit it off, and it was one of those deals. Have you ever met somebody where it's like you've known him for 30 minutes, but it felt like you knew him for 30 years?
Yeah.
That was like Mike and I, and we just hit it off. And I actually had the first time we met, I had just heard him on the Adam Carolla show. And Adam Carolla is a comedian from The Man Show and Loveline and all that stuff. And he's got like the #1 podcast in the world, has been for many years. And Mike was a guest on the Adam Carolla show and killed it. And he killed it against guys. He was on mic with guys who are professional comedians, and he was holding his own with all those guys. And so Mike and I started talking and said, hey, we got to do a podcast. And so we started it. And, there's a lot of dental podcasts out there, and everyone kind of has their lane, right? Like everybody has their niche, like what they try to do. We said, hey, we want to be a little less clinical, a little more real life, a little bit more fun. And so there are episodes that go by where we don't talk a lick of dentistry at all. And there's other episodes that are a little bit more dental heavy. But yeah, sometimes it's a little edgier. It's two guys who are being really raw and honest. About everything and trying to make people laugh and whatnot. So it's really more of I would say an amuse-bouche. There's not a lot of meat there. It's more of entertainment and trying not to, we're not going to talk about finish lines and margins and all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about, what issues we've been having with our relationships, what crappy food we've been eating and the terrible things we're doing to our bodies and, just our travel schedules and about the same kind of stuff. So it's a good deal.
Well, it's goal achieved because it's pretty funny because if you listen to a couple episodes, anybody that's involved in dentistry, you've got a little sub humor going on there. You're like, and it's just the perfect lighthearted and like I said, very edgy. And you're like, there are times where I'm listening, I'm like, I can't even believe you guys just said that. Yeah. So if you're looking for a little relief, this is it.
We did a live show a few weeks ago at the Voices of Dentistry conference, which you'll have to be at next year now that you have a podcast. They're still trying to pick the venue, but we did a live show in front of a group of, 150 or 200 people. And I went back and listened to it afterwards, and I said things and jokes that I didn't remember making, and then got Facebook messages and emails about like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. It was really funny. That's not one that you would listen to with your kids in the car, so to speak.
No. Definitely not. Yeah, use a headset. So, hey guys, if you're watching now too, we're shooting this live on Facebook. So I've got the feed going. So if you got a question as Josh and I are talking, please fire it away. I'm going to ask Josh himself, and I'll get the answers straight from the top. And Ritter just commented. He said Ritter's listening, and Marv Sani said hi. So let's roll. A couple things. Now, one of the things that you're hot about talking about is the whole thing of reputation matters. Like, this is a big deal. So, we talked about, Ritter talked on this week on reputation marketing, but reputation matters. This is a whole big different deal. And I've got a million questions I want to ask you. So first of all, tell us a little bit. Now, you're a practicing dentist. You actually have a practice, correct?
Full-time solo practitioner.
Okay. In San Antonio proper?
San Antonio, yep.
Okay, cool. And then as you develop this whole journey, tell us what reputation matters is. What is that? What is it?
Yeah, so it's just really interesting to me, the way that consumers make purchasing decisions nowadays. It used to be a lot about personal recommendations and word of mouth referrals from people, people, in your sewing circle, in your bridge game, in your weekly golf match, whatever it may be. It was you would get professional recommendations from the people, from your network of people that you've known. And now all of that, kind of has gone digital. People don't tend to have the weekly bridge game or the weekly golf game, especially people in my generation. My generation, I'm like you. I'm the tail end of Gen X. I'm assuming you're a Gen Xer as well. Mm-hmm. Our lives are full of stuff, and so we don't have that sort of social engagement time at a set place at a set time sort of stuff. Our social engagement time is when we wake up every morning and we check this, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting to see that that's the way that word of mouth referrals have gone. And so, it's the same as the traditional stuff that we've done as far as internal marketing, except now it's just like the voice is still the same with word of mouth referral. It just, that voice carries all over the world now. It doesn't just carry to the bridge game. Google's everywhere. Yelp is everywhere. So it just makes all those things so much more amplified and important because everybody can read it all the time, at any time.
Right. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing where now, we can consume information whenever we want it, around the clock? I've heard this said by so many, you've actually said this too, online is the new word of mouth in a lot of respects. And even people that I've been, talking to in the last couple of weeks, they're like, I'd love to tell you most of my patients come from internal referrals that, that was true for a long time, but I'll tell you, they come from Google now,
It's absolutely true. And it's interesting to me to see sort of the switch to that, because I think by and large, people trust, people tend to tune out to marketing. So when someone's being marketed to, they tend to tune out. And when it gets to them believing something or having some trust in something, they believe someone who is in their position, right? Mm-hmm. Just another consumer who had a situation, who had an emergency, who had a toothache, who broke a tooth, or was in a new city looking for a dentist. And those stories that they read on Google or Yelp are very appealing to the consumer's EQ, their emotional quotient, right? Mm-hmm. And those stories are... The EQ is what makes people make buying decisions. And so when you can appeal to that with a story, that is so incredibly valuable. So there's some Google reviews that I have and some Yelp reviews that I have that are a couple of sentences long and say, hey, went for a cleaning, it was great, yada, yada. Then you see some of them that are like PhD level dissertations, with 4 and 5 paragraphs about how great their experience was. And they came in and they were apprehensive and they were greeted with a smile and a cup of coffee and yada, yada, yada. And they go through the whole experience, and through the hygiene appointment, through the introductory appointment, through restorative stuff, and they're telling this long story, and it's just gold. I mean, that's just marketing gold. That if you tried to tell that story, you could never get the same emotional response from people.
Yeah.
So instead of paying a bunch of money for a TV time or for a radio time or for direct mail, just be good at what you do and get patients to tell your story for you. And other prospective patients are going to buy that so much more than they would ever buy a 30-second TV commercial or a radio ad or whatever it may be.
Absolutely. I think you're brilliant in saying that too. The power of story. And we've heard this for a long time. The story, you said at the beginning, we were doing a little pre-broadcast, you said it's not so much about content anymore. It's about your energy. It's the ability to tell a story, bring it all together in this beautiful piece that really connects with people. And I'll just piggyback on it because as you're talking, I'm like, dude, this is genius. My son's favorite show is American Ninja Warrior. Perfect example. It's, I would never watch a show. It's a bunch of guys and gals all dressed up, but right before they go, it's amazing. They always flash this thing that's common, and it's some guy who's been down on his luck. His dad died when he was 2. He got addicted to drugs and blah, 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 lived in a foster home, had a baby, and now he wants to win American Ninja Warrior for his son, and then they pan over to his son, and you're like, you gotta win. Or The Voice is my favorite. These little girls come in without any shoes on, and you're like, oh my gosh, just sing good, little girl. And
right.
somebody you would never care about, you now care because you know their story.
Right. And you're, from a perspective, and I don't mean to I'm not calling you out or throwing you under the bus, but you generally close out day 1 of the Seattle Study Club Symposium for the most part, right? You're the 4 to 5 slot. People are waning, people are tired, and they bring up Kirk Behrendt to give everybody a really good rush. Describe your presentation for me, your PowerPoint. It's just like a picture of a line at Chick-fil-A, right? It's not like this super content-rich material. No. What makes your presentation so great is the energy that you bring and the stories that you tell, right? Your content in and of itself is just a few pictures, right? Anybody could put that together with 5 minutes in a Google image search. But your ability to carry the message and tell the story and make an appeal to my emotional quotient is what makes you stand apart from everybody else, right? And it's the same thing with online reputation stuff and with marketing in general. Let's appeal to that story section. You can put together some really fabulous before and after galleries and all that kind of stuff that will not make the same emotional connection with somebody as one Google review has that tells a story that a prospective patient identifies with.
Right. So let's say I'm a young dentist and I'm watching this and I go, hey, I totally get that, Josh. Okay, but where do I start? Because, there's tons and tons of services out there. A lot of services that, they promise a lot of Google reviews and online. Walk us through that because you vetted all of this. Go there. Just take us there. Where would I start? Where do I start?
It starts with systems, staff, and scripting. That's where it starts, right? So we know that successful practices use scripting, right? That's been a long-held thing. My biggest problem with scripting and the thing I like least about it is that you have to have a staff meeting to work through it. And I hate having staff meetings, right? They're awkward. You don't know what to fill the time with. Everybody's just waiting to get on to either go home or get started with patients or whatever it may be. No one looks forward to them. They're just awkward, but you need to sometimes have a staff meeting to work out the scripting, right? When I say scripting, I mean how do you ask patients for reviews, right? There's really good ways to do that. And everybody's individual, and you have to kind of work out what your line is, right? It's just like coming up with your steady pickup line that I'm sure worked, that you used back in your single days in the bar, right?
Do you want to know mine? When I met Sarah?
What is it?
This is awesome. It's so pathetic. It was, wow. And she's like, that is horrible. So I can't relate, but keep going. So,
and then staff, this is a team sport, man. And we as dentists are the least important people in the office because we're the last person they meet. They meet everyone else before us. They're greeted. First off, before they even meet anybody, they have a phone call, right? They talk to somebody on the phone, and that's impression 1. How quickly does a phone get answered? Can they tell that the person's smiling when they answer the phone? Just all that phone etiquette stuff that's super duper important. They work through all that stuff. Then they come in. Are they greeted with a smile? Are they greeted with a cup of coffee or a cold beverage, whatever it may be? Then a dental assistant or a hygienist takes them back. What's that whole experience like? We're the one that comes in either after the cleaning or after the x-rays are taken, whatever it may be. So we're the last person they meet. We're the last impression they ever get. So it starts and ends with the staff. The team, as ACT calls it. I get in trouble for saying staff because the staff is an infection and a team is your livelihood. But it starts with the team and having systems in your office, right? And part of that's culture. Part of that's letting your team know how important this stuff is to you and to the ability for your practice to thrive and all that stuff. So, these services are interesting because these services promise the world, right? They promise you a bunch of reviews. And a lot of them will deliver. They'll get you a bunch of reviews, but they'll get you reviews on what I call microsites, right? Like the review services microsite. And I don't want to individually throw any of them under the bus because they all pretty much do the same thing. But let's say that microsite is reviewx.com. I'm just making that up. Mm-hmm. The problem with getting a bunch of reviews at reviewx.com is that nobody looks for new dentists on reviewx.com. People look for new dentists on Google and on Yelp. That's pretty much it. And so no one holds the keys to those two things. So most of these services, you hand somebody an iPad or an iPhone, you ask them for a review, they leave a review, that review goes to reviewx.com. And if it's a 4 or 5 star review, the software will then say, do you want to leave that review on Google or Yelp? And then if they click yes, then it just takes them to Google and Yelp where they have to type out the review again. Mm-hmm. So let's just skip the middleman. Don't pay that middleman $350 a month. Just ask the patients that you know that are happy for reviews and incentivize that some way, or gamify it for your office or for your patients or whatever it may be. But to get them to leave reviews, you don't need one of those services. You don't need to pay $300 a month. There's other things I'd rather spend $300 a month on. You get the systems right, you get the scripting right, you get the staff right, or the team, and the other stuff falls into place, and you don't need to spend the $300 a month.
Yeah. So give us an idea, like, how do you do it? Like, walk me through it. Like, what would you do? Like, say I'm a patient, I'm pretty happy, you finish a procedure, what do you do? So
the first things first is if anyone ever compliments us on anything, whether that be Colleen is so great, I love seeing Colleen every 6 months, whatever it may be. That's the perfect opportunity. Thank you so much. I know Colleen is great, isn't she? I let her clean my teeth, and I'm pretty picky. Mm-hmm. If you wouldn't mind, would you mind sharing that experience on Google? That's it. That's all it takes. Now, I followed up with something else. I followed up with a little card with a link to where they can go to leave that Google review. That's easy for them to type. But it's as easy as that. So that's the first opportunity. And everyone on my team, whenever they receive a compliment, they have that same line chambered. And they all have the little cards with the little link on it that takes people straight to the Google reviews. So that's opportunity one, is anytime someone compliments you, that's a perfect opportunity. Opportunity two is certainly if anybody says they found your office off of a review site. So like you should have something on your paperwork saying, who may we think for referring you? How did you hear about our office? Whatever it may be. Once you find out they found you on Google or they found you on Yelp, it's a perfect opportunity to talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm walking in the room. It's the first time I'm going to meet a patient, and they wrote down they found me on Google reviews. Hey, awesome. You found us on Google reviews. That's really great. I use it all the time to find services I'm looking for or whatever. But you know what? I'm kind of bad about it. Like I sort of abuse the system. I just go and look for reviews. I hardly ever leave reviews. Do you leave reviews? Mm-hmm. And they'll answer you honestly. And if they say yes, then it's a simple line like, I hope we can earn that 5 stars today. Just a little joke like that or whatever sort of plants the seed, right, for them to go and leave you a review afterwards if they're happy. So, it's just little stuff like that. Some of it's improvisational just based on the conversations that you have with people. But a lot of times I just joke around about it, right? Like, sort of that we're trying hard to get that 5 stars out of them, and we're going to do what we can to get it out of them. But I'll say that as a joke, make a joke about like being a desperate guy or whatever, wanting that 5 stars or whatever, whatever it may be. But I think having conversations with your patients, and it needs to be more than the dentist. It has to be more than the dentist. It's got to be everybody else on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And having a goal, I'm sure you guys have a goal at least, or maybe not a goal. Like some people talk about having a goal in the morning huddle, say, hey, look, let's get a couple reviews, because it is real currency in today's marketplace as far as your marketing goes. It's way better than a billboard or anything else. We can get a couple of these per day. It's amazing. Now, you said this is just kind of triggered things. You ever get out of an Uber and the Uber driver will go, hey, make sure you give me 5 stars. Like they ask for it. And then I always say back, I'm like, make sure you give me 5 stars too, because they have the ability to reverse review. I didn't throw up in your car, so you can do that too. And then I was just thinking, car dealerships now, they're trained to do this. They'll start by saying, I am required to get 10 stars or 5 stars in my service. Now, in the event, as we go through this, I don't get 5 stars, I want to correct it right away and make sure that you do give me like they're telling you up front.
Right.
My job, my compensation, everything. So it's all about what you said. It's the expectation, throwing it out there. Hey, look, and having a little fun with it. So it's not bad to ask for reviews. You don't get what you don't ask for, right?
Not at all. Now, the one caveat to that is probably Yelp, because Yelp is a whole different animal. They have this algorithm that filters reviews out. So if someone leaves you a review on Yelp and they've never left another review on Yelp before, or they've only left a couple, the chances are that that review is going to get filtered out. So when I'm asking people to leave reviews, it's generally going to Google, unless I know they're an active Yelp user. So the one way that I would know they're an active Yelp user is if they wrote that they found me on Yelp, right? Then I'm having the conversation with them about whether or not they leave reviews, or if they just read reviews like I do on Yelp, or whatever it may be. So, I think coldly asking someone to leave you a review on Yelp is probably a recipe for not success. It's not a recipe for failure. It's just a recipe to not have all that great success. Google doesn't filter reviews out. As long as they have a Google ID, you're in. Google is going to publish that review. So you're much better off sending people to Google unless you know they're a Yelp user. And if they're a Yelp elite user, somehow you know that. In your staff's conversation with them or whatever, you find out that they're a Yelp elite. Man, that's like gold. You got to get that Yelp elite review.
I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? Like, do you get a lot of, talk to us about the truth about Yelp. Like, because you hear all this stuff. I mean, what is Yelp elite? What is it?
So Yelp elite, they take kind of their leading reviewers, people who write the best, most useful reviews every year, get invited to be Yelp elite. And I'm sure there's some analytics behind the number of reviews and all that stuff that they leave, but Yelp has this kind of certain number of people that they give Yelp elite status to. And like if a new restaurant in town opens, like you're in Milwaukee now, right? If a new restaurant opens in Milwaukee, generally speaking, like a week before that restaurant opens, they'll have a Yelp elite event that's only for Yelp elite people to go try the restaurant first, right? So there's all these perks to being Yelp elite. Everyone wants to be Yelp elite who's a Yelp user. The way that you get it is by writing really good reviews, not just like, oh, this restaurant was good, we had a good time, thanks. Like, it have to be long content reviews that get good like upvotes and likes and whatnot. And if you do that enough, you get to be Yelp elite and you get a bunch of privileges. The other thing that happens with Yelp elite is that your reviews automatically jump to the very top. So if I have 100 Yelp reviews and someone who's a Yelp elite leaves a review, their review is going to the very top of all my reviews. So it's the first one that people read. So it's the first impression thing. A Yelp elite person will give somebody the first impression, will give everybody looking at your Yelp reviews the first impression. So you want the first impression to be good. So Yelp elites, if you can get some Yelp elites in your practice and have them leave you great reviews, it's going to go a long way to building your status and your presence on Yelp.
Okay, cool. So the Google reviews, the Yelp elites, all that. Now, you're a genius as far as social media goes. What would you say about some of the other things when it comes to reputation matters on either Facebook? Like I said, I hope Twitter. I'm miserable at Twitter, Pinterest. I mean, everybody's trying everything. Sort this out for us. Like, what do I do?
Yeah,
I'm terrible at Twitter. So
I don't know if I'm an expert. I'm not all that great on Twitter either, but Twitter is definitely powerful. And if you question that, look at November's presidential election, right? Tell me Twitter's not powerful. The idea that basically, somebody can tweet the things that our president has tweeted in the past and still become president blows my mind. But it's powerful, and companies that end up with a trending hashtag on Twitter end up seeing immense profits from that. The key to Twitter for me is interaction, right? So if someone is a Twitter user and they engage with me on Twitter, I need to be prepared to respond to that. And most of the time, it's almost always good. Someone who has a great experience, they tweet out that they had a great experience. In their mind, that's leaving a review. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't have the staying power that a Google review has or a Yelp review has, but they want to see that you comment back on, tweet back at them and thank them. And Twitter users crave interaction, right? That's the whole point of it. So Twitter's kind of its own animal. It's its own beast. I always recommend, at the very least, even if you're not going to use Twitter, sign up and claim your name and sign up and claim your practice's name. Because you hear these horror stories. I had a guy at one of my courses once, I think it was in New Jersey, and somebody had claimed his practice's name on Twitter and started like tweeting out anti-Semitic stuff, right? And so it was this big, long deal for him to prove to Twitter that that wasn't coming from him, and they had to shut down the profile, and he had to like send in utility bills and stuff like that to show that he owned the practice. And it was just a big mess. Like, even if you're not going to use Twitter, claim your name, claim your practice's name, squat on it, leave it an egg, as they call it, leave it an egg. The default kind of avatar on Twitter is a little picture of an egg. Just leave it an egg, never use it, lose the password, whatever. But then the guy down the street can't claim your Twitter name and start tweeting out terrible stuff, right? So not that that's going to happen, but I've seen it happen, and it's a mess to clean up. So at the very least, do that. My favorite social media platform is Instagram. I'm like the dumb kid who always looks at the pictures in the book first. So the pictures to me are visually appealing, and I like that. But I don't do a lot of, if you look at my Instagram feed, if you want to go look at it, it's at Joshua Austin DDS. You're not going to see very many teeth. You might see like 1 or 2 teeth on the entire like 300 or 400 pictures that I have on Instagram. It's not about teeth. It's about us. It's about our story. It's about our culture. It's about me, like what I'm doing. You see a ton of my dog, my golden doodle named Graham, who I'm madly in love with. It's a lot of stuff like that, right? It's the personal connection stuff. Because I strongly believe that people don't care that February is National Children's Dental Health Month. They just don't care. What they care about is the Christmas party that you had with your team. And all of you together in your festive clothes, gathered around, arms around each other with a big smile on your face, and hashtag team goals or hashtag squad. Or I would go to war. I think I on my Instagram from that one is I would go to war with these women. And how much you love your team and the nice things you do for your team, and your family vacations, and your dog, and your kids' baseball game, and the things that make you seem real as a person, right? Yeah. I think people want to know that about the people who are rendering care to them. It's different from sort of the way I feel about it. I mean, I would never, ever want to go look at like what my physician does, like when he's off of work. But I think it's just a different day and time nowadays. So I think, keep it probably 90% sort of personal fun stuff and 10% dental. Yeah. Like when the AP comes out and says you don't need to floss anymore, right? Perfect time to like chime in with something dental related, right? But outside of that, I think keep it fun, keep it lighthearted, and do it that way. If you get a CEREC machine or whatever, great, highlight that. But for the most part, make it fun. Make it to where people smile when they look at your feed, not think how terrible of a person they are because they missed their last 6 month appointment. Right? Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty powerful because I like Instagram now. I don't use it as much, but now you can blow up the picture. You can actually see a little bit closer. And it's actually, I don't know the statistics, you would know, but it's growing faster than a lot of the other social media platforms for the fact that it's purely visual. And this as being a great restorative dentist, in any photography class, people are always like, trying to get the teeth right. The secret to great photographs is always the eyes. The eyes tell the whole story. So while you're trying to take a picture of your team having fun, you could do this too, Josh. You look at a team, you go, I can tell if these people like each other. It's all in the magic of the eyes. So the key is having fun. Now, what would you say? Let's say I'm an older dentist. Let's say I'm 50 and I'm like, hey, or 60, that's not serious, but 60. Let's say I'm 62, 63, and I didn't grow up in the social media thing. I'm like, Josh, I don't even have an account. What would you do? Like, where do I start? I probably have some team members that like this stuff. So I always tell the story, and every dentist can identify this is at some point during the day, you got to walk up front for something, right? Ask about a patient's account or tell them what, we're going to do a crown on number 19 on Mr. Bell because he just broke it, whatever. And it happens to me like once a week where I walk up front and someone up front is on their phone and they try to quickly hide it or pretend that they weren't on it, right? So what do you think they were doing when they were on the phone? Social media. Absolutely. So I guarantee you that there is someone in every dentist's office who is on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, at some point during the day. If you don't want to be involved with it, fine. Task it to them. Because you know what? Even if you have a strict no phone policy, no, personal computer stuff, whatever, they're sneaking it. I guarantee you they're sneaking it. So instead of making them sneak it, let them do it, but just let them do it with business in mind, right? Like with your practice stuff in mind. Now, when you hand it over to the 27-year-old dental assistant or front desk person or whoever it may be who's going to handle this stuff, do you want to give them like carte blanche from day one to start posting whatever they want to post? Like, no, maybe for the first couple weeks or month or whatever, like you vet the stuff that they post. They have to show you first and then you approve it. But at some point, like they're going to figure out kind of what you want and what the culture of that feed is and what the taste of it is and what your tastes are and the stuff you want out there. And then you won't have to approve every single thing that goes out there. And for the most part, they're going to use their best judgment. They work for you, for God's sake. Like, they can't have that terrible judgment if you hired them, right?
Right.
So I think task it to somebody.
Yeah.
Even if let's say, I'll hear this all the time. Well, listen, I'm 55 years old. I've been in practice for 30 years and my dental assistant and receptionist have been with me for 28 years or whatever, and they're the same age as me. Okay, great. But if you're 55, you probably have a 25-year-old kid or a 24-year-old kid or a 19-year-old kid that I guarantee you for $50 a week would love to handle all this stuff for you. It'd be no problem.
Oh, yeah. Well, the storm's coming, too, because while I might be that dentist who's 55 who doesn't do it, the whole storm of how people are communicating is coming up. I mean, I've got a sophomore in high school, 14, 12. The new hottest thing is called In the House. Have you seen the In the House thing? So In the House is where you can see, it's kind of like the Brady Bunch. You can see everybody and you can talk to as many people as you want and it gives a notification in the house and then you can block people from the house, but they're all communicating in the house, so we can poo-poo it all we want, but it's coming where people only communicate through their phones.
Right. Well, and at some point it won't even be a phone anymore, right? It'll be a brain implant or whatever.
Right.
But it's still the same idea of communicating face-to-face or even on the phone, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when I see my phone ring and it's like, God, just text me. Like, it's so much easier, right? And I'm 38 years old, and it's just easier for me a lot of times to text. I just got a call from Eric Rindler not long ago. Mm-hmm. Eric, you have 2 sons in college. Like, they can't answer their phone when you call them. Just text me. He has one quick question. Like, text me that question. I'll respond really quickly. Yeah. I just think we're to the point where I think the dopamine centers in our brain like only activate when they see the blue light of the phone screen, unfortunately. And that's a whole other social problem. Like, don't get me started on it. Mm-hmm. Problem, don't get me wrong. It just ain't going anywhere. So go where the patients are, and their patients are on their screen. So go to their screens.
Absolutely. So on the subject of reputation matters, what else would you highlight? Because you get to see a lot of stuff. Like, what else have you seen that are killers? Like, you've seen bad reviews. Some people get bad reviews. Like, where would you start with that? It's going to happen, right? So if you're, if you have a presence and you start building some reviews, at some point you're going to get negative feedback, right? Mm-hmm. And that's fine. Like, it's okay. I call it the Reese's peanut butter cup phenomenon, right? So what makes a Reese's peanut butter cup so great? It's the salty and the sweet mixed together, right? Yeah. So if you went to a restaurant and that restaurant had 1,000 Yelp reviews, all 5 stars and nothing else, what would you think? I'd be a little skeptical or curious. Lives, right? There's something going on here. But look up, like, French Laundry is a great example. French Laundry is potentially the best restaurant in the country, if not the world. You go on their Yelp site, they're like 4.5 stars, right? Mm-hmm. They're not, they don't have a perfect record all the way across. There's 1 or 2 every once in a while that are a 1 or a 2-star review. And I think the same thing is true for dentistry. As long as it's not a bunch, as long as it doesn't overwhelm the number of good reviews, let's say you have 15 5-star reviews and 1 2-star review, don't sweat it. Mm-hmm. Don't sweat the 2-star review, because the 2-star review lends credence to all the other 5-star reviews. And it makes it seem like it's not particularly fabricated, right? It takes away some of the, it gives it kind of a natural patina, as I call it, right? Now, there are some things to do when you get a bad review, and I think the first thing first is, we're at a different advantage than most, like, restaurants, for instance, right? Restaurant gets a bad review,
how do they get in touch with that person? That you don't, when you go to a new restaurant, you go to a new Mexican food restaurant tonight for dinner, you don't fill out new patient paperwork when you walk in. They may be able to dig around and find your credit card receipt or whatever, but they don't know how to get in contact with you. We have all of our patients' information.
Yeah.
We have their email, we have their cell phone, we have all that stuff. We can get a hold of them. You'd be stunned at if somebody has a bad experience, you just call them on the phone and just say, hey, Joshua Austin here. Listen, I read that you had a bad experience. I'm really sorry. I'd love to talk to you about it. Yeah. And you just listen to them and acknowledge them. And a lot of times that's enough to get the person to go back and take off their review. Yeah,
absolutely. And I've heard that so many times. When you have a bad review, easy thing to do, just call them and just say one thing. Hey, I care. And another thing that I've heard, tell me if this, don't talk. Don't talk. Just listen. Just listen. Because half the time is they just want to share.
Right. Absolutely. They just want to get it out. Acknowledge them. Always be respectful, even if it's kind of a crazy thing that they're upset about. Be respectful, right? Because we can't control what upsets someone else, right? And so just be respectful. Acknowledge them. If it's something you did wrong, let's say it's an insurance thing. Let's say it's you didn't ask the right questions at insurance verification or something, and they ended up with a bill that they weren't expecting, and you dropped the ball somehow. Offer them a remedy of some sort. Bleaching trays, a free toothbrush, just an olive branch to say, hey, I'm sorry. Stuff happens. I'm very sorry this happened. It will not happen again. Please accept this gift. And those kind of things go a long way. Now, if you didn't screw anything up and the person's just crazy, don't bribe them with something just to make them uncrazy. I often say sometimes it's best just to let crazy be crazy, right?
Yeah.
We can pick up on that as consumers. When we read a review, one of my favorite things to do, it's a weird schadenfreude thing, is just to go and read reviews, and especially bad ones. Because every once in a while you just run across one that's completely crazy, and you can just say, oh, that person is nuts. Right. And the radar goes off, and just let them be crazy, right? Yeah. Don't encourage them, all that kind of stuff. Just let it happen. Sometimes you have to just shake it off,
Yeah, absolutely. And you find that there's enough nuts people out there. Here's the cool thing about people that are nuts. They don't think they're nuts. So don't try to argue with them. I see people trying to argue. I'm like, she's crazy. Don't try to argue, because she doesn't see her behavior as irrational,
Yeah, you can't logic with somebody who has no logic, right? You can't reason with somebody that has no reason. So I think let crazy be crazy in those rare situations that it happens. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you it doesn't happen, because when I go and lecture, inevitably at the end of the lecture, at some point during a break, someone will come up and tell me some crazy story.
Yeah.
And stuff happens, and it may happen to you, but it's just because you get one 1-star review or 2-star review or one person saying that you did this or that or whatever, it's not the end of the world. Just get some more good ones and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Speaking of crazy, I always like to ask every dentist, what's the craziest thing a patient has ever said to you? I'm putting you kind of on the spot, but is there anything that sticks out that you're like, whoa, like that just totally caught me off guard?
There's a couple of my daughter's in the waiting room and I'd really love for you to go on a date with her or stuff, that kind of thing. It's always awkward because how do you answer that?
Well, you're good looking. That's easy. That's easy for you.
If they're a full mouth rehab and I'm trying to sell the rehab, I'm down, whatever it takes to close this case.
Yeah.
I mean, it's usually stuff like that, which is always awkward.
Yeah, that's awkward. So cool. So, hey, a lot of young dentists watching this. Okay. So you're a young dentist. You haven't hit the 40 yet where you can't see anymore and you can't hear as well. So you're, it's around the corner for you. You're still running and gun. You have a lot of energy. What would you say to a young dentist who's right behind you, maybe 32, 35, about the future of dentistry? Where do you see all these trends coming when it comes to reputation, private practice, all that stuff? Because you hear all this stuff and you get to see everything.
Yeah. I mean, just the digitization of everything, I think, has some great advantages and it has some great disadvantages as well. We talked about the advantages a little bit and some of the disadvantages from a patient gathering perspective and a marketing, recruiting, retention kind of perspective, and all that stuff. You can hear all sorts of stuff about from a clinical perspective. Just because something's digital doesn't mean it's easier or better. In fact, I think it's much more important with digital dentistry to have more sound fundamentals of being able to prep a tooth and be able to isolate well and control tissue and all that sort of stuff with digital than even it was in the analog days, because digital just magnifies everything so much. There's no room for error. All that sort of slop room for error. You had Schroeder on, I think, for this week, and that's one of the things it talks about is sort of the old systems are all set up with just a little bit of slop here and there. And that can sort of offset some error that accrues. But with digital, there's none of that slop that sort of can get offset as you go further down the process. So if something's off at the beginning, it gets way off at the end, with your end product. So, digital from a dentistry perspective, it makes it more difficult for people like me who are solo practitioners from an economies of scale perspective to be able to compete with larger groups. And I don't even mean like corporate groups. I mean, certainly they're in play here when I talk about that, but even 5 or 6 dentists who have teamed up together and say, you know what, we're going to share some of these expenses that we never had before, like a milling machine, a digital scanner, a cone beam CT machine, all of those digital things, a 3D printer or whatever that cost a lot of money. And for me as a solo practitioner really means a commitment to in my practice. If I want to buy a CEREC machine, I have to be really committed to that. My whole team has to be really committed to that. Mm-hmm. If you have a team of 5 or 6 dentists, you can get a lot of use out of that CEREC without a complete paradigm shift of the practice, right? By just sharing and distributing the costs and whatnot. And then the machine is going more often and has, will meet its ROI faster. So I think that's a difficult thing for us to sort of reconcile. My fiance owns I'm trying to figure out how to say this correctly because she gets onto me and the company she works with gets onto me. She works with Pacific Dental Services.
Okay.
She owns half and they own half, right? Mm-hmm. So she's got a CEREC. She's got 3 associates and specialists and all that stuff that come in at her office. And her favorite game to play, it's my least favorite game, it's her favorite game, is how much do you pay for this? And it'll be like, how much do you pay for Scotch Bond Universal? And I'll tell her. And then she'll tell me what she pays, and I'm inevitably pissed off at the end of that game because she pays so much less. Why does she pay so much less? Because
collective buying power,
so much stuff that they have negotiated rates that I can never get. Same goes through with insurances, right? Like they're able to negotiate fee schedules that I can never get.
Yeah.
So they're definitely, I see a trend going of teaming up in groups, that becoming a much more profitable venture for dentists. And I don't exactly, and no one knows like what the model is going to be and how it's going to take shape. Are we going to be sort of in sort of dental hospitals where one floor is it is specialists and one floor is general dentists and we all share some of the overhead and whatnot? I don't know how that's gonna come to fruition, but I think at some point, we're going to have to start teaming up a little bit because it's just going to get hard for the single guys like me to compete.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm always curious about that because you were probably in diapers when you heard this, when I got started, which I'm a lot older than you, everybody's been talking about it's over. PPOs were supposed to disappear over 20 some years ago. Dentists were supposed to disappear when fluoride came onto the scene. The nation's sugar consumption went up 700%. Like it's always been over. The end is near. The end is near. And I hate that conversation. Now, I do agree it's changing. There's no question the landscape's changing, but what isn't? Like what landscape isn't changing where people are just sitting back and enjoying and reaping the rewards? I think it's just one of those things where you got to just understand. It's so funny. High school kids are like, it's so hard. Everything is so hard. It's so hard. I'm like, it's high school. Stop it. You know what I mean?
I would kill to go back to high school.
Oh, I would kill, man. I was starting. You have really good hair, but my hair was going at age 14. Like I was doing a comb over at 14. I would put the hairspray in there, and then I'd walk across the field, and it would flip up like this. But I still had fun in high school. And then one day, my mom's like, "That's got to go. We got to get rid of that."
That's it.
Yeah, but you know what? High school, it's never going to get easier. It's going to get harder, and I think that's the opportunity for young dentists. Is you got to up your games. You use the word EQ, like that's huge. A lot of people don't even know. Go back to that because that is everything. What is EQ? And I am baffled that you would even have your arms around a concept like that at your age.
Right. So like there's IQ, right?
Right.
Intellectual quotient. Intelligence quotient, whatever you want to call it, and EQ, the emotional quotient, right?
Right.
So it's left brain, right brain, right? People make buying decisions based on emotion. They don't make buying decisions based on fact. If that were the case, then every single car commercial would just be 0 to 60 in 14 seconds, this fuel economy, whatever. But what do car commercials, what's a Toyota commercial now, right? It's the mom driving in the Toyota 4Runner to go see her daughter who's coming home from Afghanistan at the airport, right?
Right.
And you just see the little Toyota logo barely on the steering wheel.
Right.
to the end of me like, oh, that's a Toyota commercial. I have no idea. Like, my sister will cry at a Whirlpool washer commercial, right? Because there's like Landslide by Fleetwood Mac is playing during the song, and it's like, you know, the daughter's growing up and her 0 to 3 months clothes don't fit anymore, and they're pulling them out of the washer, and she's folding them up and putting them in a box, and my sister's like bawling, crying.
Hey, I cried during that. I know exactly which commercial you're talking about.
It's pure EQ, right? There's nothing intellectual about that commercial. It's not telling you what the water efficiency savings is by switching to a Whirlpool washer. It's not telling you about how many cycles you can run before a repair or the energy expenditures or any of that.
Yeah.
All it's showing is a story, and the washer and dryer are like a bit player in the story, and they're just in the background. And then it goes through the arc of the story, and then there's the logo, and that's what you remember. Right? So these are pure EQ pleas, right?
Yeah.
So I do the same in marketing. I think you're trying to tell people how important it is for them to drink fluoridated water, or, you know, all of that kind of stuff.
I paid $2 for this, not because I there's a bubbler. You know what a bubbler is? Do you remember? You probably don't even know what a bubbler is. You're so young. But there's a bubbler downstairs. I get it for free, but I paid $2 for this. You know why I paid $2 for this? Because it's the story I tell myself. When I drink it, I feel so much healthier than the water that's coming from the sewer, right?
I say, meanwhile, they got it from a tap about 14 miles from you, right?
They did, yeah.
Bottling facilities happen. So it's just all about the story. So I think when we're doing marketing stuff, appealing to the story, I think is the important thing, and knowing the power of a story.
Right.
And that's the other thing. I mean, you have to have a message, right? If you're going to be doing some marketing, you got to have a message. If you don't have a message, the rest of it's hollow. It starts with the message that you got to get across. Now, you may not have a message at any given time, and that's fine. But I guarantee you, you know, there's for instance, I had a frustration in my practice of people making decisions based on their dental insurance, right? Or letting dental insurance drive their decision-making about their treatment. And it happened a couple times in a week or in a month. And I was just, God, the stupid, and I'm just pulling an insurance company out, the stupid Delta Dental is screwing with my ability to render treatment, right? And so I started coming up with this idea to have this small scale PR campaign about stop letting dental insurance companies make your decisions, right? And then the rest of it, the rest of that PR campaign, the audience who I was gearing it to, what were the distribution methods, what metrics I used to track it, all that stuff came around because I had the message first, right? So the message is the heart of everything. Once you have your message, all the other stuff falls into pieces or falls into place. When stuff doesn't work, it's because you don't have a good solid message behind what you're trying to say. And so I just have a message, right? Try to be on brand. Come up with what your brand is, and then come up with messages that sort of echo strengthening that brand to your patients or your prospective patients.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're talking about is really kind of your core values, why you do what you do. It could be that simple. Like, what we are about is this. This is why we do it. This is where it all came from. This is our evolution. This is how we see our patients. I mean, you know, I'm a big fan of Chick-fil-A, but even in Chick-fil-A, they got the story on the wall when you go to the bathroom of how it all started and everything. And the story gives a lot of power behind the brand. People just don't go to work anymore. They believe in the whole process of how it all comes together. Dude, you are a genius. And to get this at such a young age is critically important to the future success of any business, like any business. You got to.
Absolutely. It's not just dentistry. And in fact, dentistry is usually the last one to the game, right? You have to look at other businesses to kind of get this idea. Speaking of Chick-fil-A, are you familiar with the website The Ringer?
No, what is it? Tell me.
It's Bill Simmons. Bill Simmons was with ESPN, and he had a website called Grantland, and then he got fired from ESPN, and he spun off and opened this website called The Ringer. It's a lot of sports and pop culture and all that stuff. This week was their food week.
Okay.
The 50, a list of the 50 best fast food items.
Okay.
And on Wednesday when this list came out, I was pissed. This list made me so angry because number one was Chick-fil-A waffle fries.
Oh, come on.
That's
come on.
Insanity. I'm not saying they're bad, but number one.
Come on, you can't be number one with that. What was number two? What was number two?
It's a In-N-Out double. All right.
Ooh, that's a good argument.
I'm in on that. Good. But if something from Chick-fil-A is going to be number one, it's got to be the Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich, right?
It's got to be a chicken sandwich.
I mean, it's perfect.
People sleep in a parking lot. No one sleeps in a parking lot for the fries.
That's exactly right. They're a nice accoutrement. They're a nice thing to go with it, but they're not number one. Number three was McDonald's fries. I'm not all that in on that. I don't know. We have this thing in Texas called Whataburger, and to me, Whataburger is number one with a bullet. But I get Whataburger as like a regional thing. Not everybody knows what Whataburger is, but if you're listening to this and you don't know what Whataburger is, and you are somewhere and you drive by a Whataburger, you've got to stop. You've got to stop and have one. They're a great example of marketing on brand. They are all about their brand is Texas, right? They are Texan to the core.
Yeah,
commercial has like the old Western guy, like his voice is just ringing in. It's like it just is. It's perfect, right?
Yeah.
And they know what they do. They make a hamburger and they make a barbecue chicken sandwich, and that's what they do, right? Yep. And they stick to it. And Chick-fil-A is the same way. They make a chicken sandwich. They haven't added a hamburger. They haven't added everything they make is chicken, right? They stick to what they do. And I think that's important for dentists because we tend to get outside of our lane a little bit.
Right. You know, and actually Whataburger, they put one in Dallas Love. There's one in Dallas Love, right?
Yeah.
Right there. And it's always jam-packed right there. You got everything else.
And there's a Chick-fil-A like right next door to it, which is jam-packed too.
Yeah.
And the side is like a barbecue place that no one's ever at and a Chinese food place that no one's ever at.
Yeah.
And a Mexican food place that no one's ever at. It's everybody's on the other side where the Whataburger and Chick-fil-A is.
Yeah, and my brain isn't working so well. But In-N-Out, what's the burger chain in California? Is that what's the one?
Yeah, they're out of California, or they're sort of primarily Pacific California area.
That everybody goes and you gotta try it, like it's
like secret menu and all that stuff. Yeah,
and they don't even have there's nothing on the, like you can't get chicken, you can't get anything. It's just burgers.
They're a great example. They're just burgers. You know, same kind of thing. They actually opened a couple In-N-Outs here in San Antonio. You know, people will wait in like the drive-through line for an hour to get an In-N-Out, and it just blows my mind. And yet people get mad about waiting for a Profi for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? But go wait for an hour for a double, you know, animal style or whatever. Blows my mind. But it's just priorities, right? It's priorities and values.
Absolutely.
At going to the dentist is fun. And so like one of the little campaigns that I've kind of started up recently in my area, just using social media posting and boosting and stuff like that, is the idea that a dental visit can be surprisingly awesome, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be bad. You know, in fact, we hear that all the time. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, right? In fact, it was kind of good, right? We hear that all the time. So just the idea of like, hey, let's be surprisingly awesome. You know, all we have to do is clear the very low bar that they have for what they expect their visit to be. We just got to clear that little low bar, right? Just make it a little bit better than they thought it was going to be, and they leave happy.
That's all it is. It all is. Dude, you are the best. I appreciate it. So what last advice would you give to young dentists? Just looking forward to a future career in dentistry, what would you say to them?
So I'm obsessed with just the idea of movement, right? Just forward momentum, right? Just always be moving forward. We've talked about this before. So the very first time that you came to my study club, we talked about the time we met. I mean, you had people in the audience crying. You're talking about marathon stories. And I remember something in specific saying you have to take a shower or you have to earn your shower. Take your shower, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember leaving that meeting feeling really terrible about myself, right? Like,
why? That's not...
It was just like, oh my God, he's so much better of a human being than I am, right? Like I'm so cynical and I'm so sort of glass half empty, you know, so it's easy in San Antonio. So, you know, Brian Schroeder, he was on your program the other day. He's a lot like me. We're sort of kind of pessimists. We sort of see the negative side of things. And then there's Bill Robbins, who's the exact opposite, right? And everybody is Bill Robbins' best friend. And the glass is half full always. And it's not only is it half full, it's getting filled up as we speak. He's always got a smile on his face. Like he's Captain Disneyland, right?
Always.
And so it's just interesting that I see people fall in that. And you're sort of Captain Disneyland a little bit, right? And I go to see you for the first time, and I really did. I left not feeling all that great about myself. But the one thing that stuck with me was the idea of earning a shower, not taking a shower, right? Yeah. And so I decided, you know, I have a lot of admin stuff. I'm a solo practitioner, and so like I do my bookkeeping and I do my marketing and I do the payroll and I do all that stuff. So the only time that I can really get stuff done is early in the morning before anybody gets here, right? After that, it's game on. And as soon as someone walks in the door, there's 1,000 distractions and life happens so quickly. So I said, you know what? I really need to start moving in the morning and getting some sort of physical activity going in the morning, but I have to get to the office really early. So I built a stand-up desk that I stand at, and I didn't stop there. I put a walking treadmill underneath it.
Yeah.
So before I see my first patient in the morning, I've walked 5 miles.
You're kidding. That's awesome.
I'm walking at like 2.3 miles an hour. So I can answer emails and I can type and I can write my dental economics article and I can do all that stuff all while I'm walking on my treadmill. And it's just the idea of just moving around, right? Just always be moving, always be moving.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say for young dentists. Just always be moving. You know, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, if you're starting your practice and you're not doing a full mouth rehab in the first 3 months or whatever, it doesn't matter. Just be getting a little bit better all the time, right? And if it's a little bit slow, that's when you work on your systems, right? Like that's when you really hone those skills and get your systems up and working and get your staff trained right and do all those things. Just always be moving and working towards something. Yeah. And I do the same thing with CE, like, and I'm about to kind of reach this weird junction. So always be working towards a goal with CE, right? Because you can just sort of scatter shot your CE and get a little bit of here and a little bit of there and a little bit there, and there's no continuity to it or no gel to it. I'm an AGD member, so my first goal was I'm going to get my fellowship in the AGD, right? And then I got that like 6 years ago, and then it was like, all right, now I'm going to work towards my mastership in the AGD. And I got all my credits for that earned by last year, but I couldn't go to last year's ceremony, so I'm going to the one this year. I'll have my MAGD this year. But now it's like, okay, what's next? Well, what's next is I'm going to do American Board of General Dentistry and become a board certified general dentist, right? It's just always having a goal and working towards something, right? Is what helps keep you from getting burned out, getting lost in the woods, all that kind of stuff. So just that idea of just positive momentum, right? Just moving forward towards something.
Yeah, I love that, buddy, because movement creates emotion. When you're moving, you can create emotion. You can create a lot of energy. The other thing, too, my mom worked in a nursing home forever, and she would say as soon as they stop moving, they die. And so her motivation, she's like, you're going to move today. You're going to get up and walk. And they go, no, I'm not walking. She's like, do you want to live or do you want to die? You're going to move. Keep moving, because the same thing happens. We just start to fall apart. We're not moving. So I love it, man. Keep moving. And dude, you're moving a lot. So now if you're, again, I'm so proud of you. You're like a little brother that I've just watched growing up. It's so cool. And now if you look for a great speaker, again, Josh does an amazing job. And you diversified yourself, like I said at the beginning, in so many different ways. You do a restorative update that I keep hearing about. It's fantastic. You do a materials update, because I know as a dentist, sometimes you're wondering, where do I go? You've got all these little quick, easy, and very relative things people can use right away, the next day.
That's part of my goal is, you know, we've all been to these really great CE courses that talk about big full mouth implant, full mouth rehabilitation stuff. And that's fine and good. But on Monday morning, I'm doing a DO composite on number 4. So let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about the single tooth crown prep in 2 crowns, right? Like the quadrant kind of dentistry, the small stuff, the 1s, the 2s. That's the stuff we do. That's the stuff that keeps us in business. And yet we do zero education on it, right? Like we go to a big meeting, like I was at the American Academy of Restorative Dentistry. And, you know, 90% of the material there is on indirect restorations, porcelain veneers, porcelain crowns, implant stuff, whatever. But 75% of the restorations we do are direct restorations.
Right.
And 20 minutes talking about direct restorations in a 2-day meeting. We should be doing it the other way around. We should be talking about direct restoration 75% of the time, because that's what we do 75% of the time. So finding a way to make yourself a minute and a half faster on a DO composite is much more valuable to you than going and learning for full mouth rehabilitation for a day for something you may not do for 6 months, 9 months, even a year, right? So I think my whole goal is, let me give you 2 or 3 or 4 things that you can do differently to make yourself a little bit faster or get a better clinical outcome with the same amount of time, or little tips and tools that I've gotten to review it through dental economics that can make your dentistry more predictable or efficient, or just make your day a little bit saner, right? That's kind of the goal.
That's awesome. So how could people find you? What's the best way to find you?
Any social media at Joshua Austin DDS. My lecturing website is austindentalseminars.com. Same thing on Facebook. Email is great. Email is jaustindds@me.com. If you have any questions, get at me. Instagram at Joshua Austin DDS, anything like that. Dental economics pearls for your practice column.
Yeah, and you're hyper responsive. Like you get back to people like right away and almost in real time.
Yeah, I try.
I think you're wearing those Google glasses and just dictating it while you're working or something. I don't know what's happening.
That would be cool. That would be. If there was some way to do it, I would, like some sort of weird, like Stephen Hawking, like he's got that like little straw that he spells with or whatever. If I could do that while I was prepping teeth, I'd be happy.
Well, if there's a guy that's going to figure it out, you're going to be the guy. So, buddy, I appreciate you so much, brother. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask, as you're watching this, if you have questions, even after the live broadcast, please enter them in the feed. You'll see Josh will respond like right away. Even if he's sleeping, he'll respond right away, answer any questions that you have. And if you're really wondering where I start with social media, look at his stuff. Just check it out. This guy knows what he's doing, and I'm just so grateful. So thank you very much, Josh, for being on.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
All right. So cool. Hey, if you're watching, thanks again. Hit the share button and keep watching the Best Practices Show. Until next time, we'll see you and have a great rest of your day.
Peace.
Peace out.